Good evening and welcome to Vegan World Radio, heard every week on KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston and 89.5 FM in Galveston, Texas, and on the web at kpft.org. Archives of our show may be found on veganworldradio.org. My name is Pamela Kletke, and today we speak with John Waddell, Australian author of But You Kill Ants, a book he wrote to help vegans respond to 100 common questions and comments, and to help non-vegans understand that being vegan is a viable way to live in terms of health, the humane treatment of animals, and the environment. John is a marathon runner who won the Sydney Marathon for the over 60s age group and has participated in numerous other marathons. He also leads young people on hiking trips all over the world. We will also be speaking with Maureen Collier, who is the Secretary-Treasurer of the Vegetarian Vegan Society of Queensland, which is located in the northeastern part of Australia. The Society's aim is to provide support to vegetarians and vegans and to those wishing to make the change. They offer nutritional advice, recipes, religious views, opportunities for discussion, and more. Maureen has been acknowledged as one of the vegan voices around the world. These are leaders within the vegan movement, vegan activists, forerunners of the first vegan societies, and the like. Before joining the society, Maureen was active in Australia's Animal Liberation and animal rights charity. But before we do that, we're going to hear a song by Steve Kilbey, a vegan poet, artist, and musician from Australia, whom you may know from a band called The Church. The song is Outbound, and it is the first track off Steve's new album, Painkiller.
White hippie Moses, like an aphid in the roses, universal inverse in inverted poses, like a snort of amnesia up all of your noses, not what the man in the street supposes. Like a real-time being, it's the shadow you're seeing, it's the aureola, flying and fleeing, essential potential of color keying. Why can't you forget all this, you and me? Sonic anathema, wake up you dreamer, I'm falling out of heaven, gonna crash on your beamer. Big man fly, pull down a screamer, break a femur, I'm going to Lima. Imploded in public, his nose was Roman, but his taste was Catholic. He put out some magic on a piece of plastic. It's really tragic how they needed the music.
That was Steve Kilbey playing Outbound, a song from his new solo album, Painkiller. Today we will be speaking with John Waddell, who is from Australia, and we're just delighted and very honored to have him on the show today. And we're going to be hearing about his amazing life journey and how he came to be vegan, as well as in particular about a book he's written called But You Kill Ants, and great title and lots of fascinating information in it. And so we'll talk about that too. So John, I'd like to have you introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thanks, Pamela. Great to be talking to you. You call me John Waddell. I actually have a nickname that I'm known as here, and that's Mr. Burns, because of a similarity to the character in The Simpsons.
Really?
You've got a picture of me as well as the voice. So, you'd like me to say about how I became a vegan?
Yes. Tell us about, I know you started out, as most of us, as a vegetarian, and then sort of moved on. And maybe tell us about, how you came to be vegetarian and then and you made the next transition.
Yeah, sure. From my reading back in the 60s, I was convinced that a vegetarian diet was the healthiest. That was my main concern about my health. But then in the late 70s, I read Animal Liberation by Peter Singer. And before I'd reached the end of Professor Singer's book, then my interest wasn't so much in my own health for selfish reasons, but rather the health and welfare of animals, after I finally became aware of the torture that they're put through to provide us with meat or dairy. And so it's now 30 years that I've been a vegan, and people are still concerned, I find, that you can't be vegan and be healthy because of excellent promotions by the meat and dairy industries as to how essential meat and dairy are. But then I point out that in that 30 years I've not had one day off sick. Can't be too bad for you.
Definitely.
Then the other side, as well as not having a day off sick, I took up marathon running 10 years ago, and I became wrapped in that sport. Mainly, I suppose, Pamela, because unlike so many sports where you're trying to kill your opponent, in marathon running, outside of the elite runners, in marathon running you tend to help your opponent because you know what they're going through too, and so you're encouraging your opposition rather than trying to destroy them. And so I got hooked on marathon running and have had some success there as by winning the my age division in the Sydney Marathon and the Great Ocean Road Marathon. And what satisfies me so much about that, Pamela, is that I can say to people, how many do you know in their 60s who can run the whole 26 miles of a marathon without slowing up at all during that time, and do that in a bit over 3.5 hours? So that really, in a sense, answers all concerns people might have about becoming a vegan, because if after 25 years, as it was when I won that age division event, after 25 years without any animal products, I can still run 26 miles and not have a day off sick in all that time, you don't have to worry about concerns of not eating meat or dairy.
That is such a wonderful story, and I'm so glad you're sharing that with us, because I think you're absolutely right. That is a concern people have, is, well, gosh, I'm going to be weak, I won't be healthy, and a number of things that
Where do you get your protein from?
Yes, I think that may have been the first
the one you get all the time, Pamela?
Point. Yes, and I know that's something that was in your book, and perhaps you'd like to maybe share a little bit of your response with us to that question that you get, and we all get.
Yes, it's that seems to be the first question we get when people find out that we don't eat animal products, because they've been convinced that the only way you can have strength and energy is through eating meat, and that's of course not the case. I say to people that every food has protein, which surprises them, and I say don't believe me. Just look in your supermarket and read the labels, and you'll see that every food contains protein. And there are so many, such as beans and tofu, broccoli, and nuts especially, that contain a high percentage of protein. And our main problem, both for you as Americans and us for Australians, is not so much how can we get enough protein, but rather our concern is that we get too much protein. We eat more than we should. And similarly with dairy, soy milk provides us with calcium just almost as much as dairy milk does. So the concern people have about not having dairy products because of the calcium, that's equally solved by using plants instead of dairy.
Well, yes, in fact, the calcium in milk, in cow's milk and other animal milks, actually is not absorbed as good as the calcium in green leafy vegetables. I just sort of came across that recently, and yet another reason, of course, it's always good to eat your green leafy vegetables, but when you find out that the calcium in these things, your body absorbs it better and provides just all the nutrients you need without, of course, all the added fat and antibiotics and all the other horrific things associated with the dairy industry.
All the negatives, as you say. And then you can look at people such as Martina Navratilova, who's been a vegan for many years, and Scott Jurek. You know about Scott Jurek, Pamela? Scott Jurek is the winner of what's probably the world's toughest endurance race, the Death Valley Ultramarathon.
Okay.
Which is exceed 50 degrees, and he's won that event after a long time as a vegan, and also done the Western States 100-mile run. That's the one that features all the steep climbs and snow and rivers and desert and so on, and desert, I should say, not desert, desert. And he's won that 7 consecutive times. Being a vegan doesn't cause any problems at all health-wise. In fact, The problem is not being a vegan.
Absolutely. Now, one of the other many, there are 100 of these, and just for our listeners' information, 100 of these sort of statements that people tend to make. And as you point out at the beginning, John, this book is for people who themselves are vegan, and sort of here's how you might consider approaching some responses to these questions. But also, the book is, I guess, targeted for people who aren't, but who have themselves heard these sort of myths about the diet and are looking for some information. And I just love the fact that although each one of your points is responded to on a page, that you have extensive source material that you refer people to.
Yes, that's true. How this came about, Pamela, was that I remember, going back quite a few years, getting quite annoyed with myself when people would express some concern or objection to me, and then an hour or two later I'd think, oh, why didn't I say such and such? Or other people would hit me with some objection, and I wouldn't on the spot be able to come up with evidence to answer their concern. And I said, why the hell doesn't someone write a book answering the most common objections to being vegan? And then I say, well, why expect someone else to do it? Do it yourself, you dork. And so that's what happened. I put together, at that stage, I was able to think of about 80 objections that I'd come across either in writing or that people had expressed to me about becoming a vegan. And then I waited a bit longer until I had 100, and then composed answers to all of those.
Didn't take long, did it?
But often we can get bored with reading pages and pages or chapters or a whole book on one particular aspect. So I thought I'd use the KISS system, K-I-S-S, keep it simple, stupid. And so I kept each answer to one page, but provided lots of references for those who would like to go into it in more detail. But it's intended as a nice small handbook, as you say, for vegans to have if they need to answer objections, or also, and perhaps just as important, for people who are considering the move but are worried about everything from their health to embarrassment, what people are going to think of them, what trouble they're going to cause for their family, and so on.
Yes, and
it also finishes with all the nonsense comments you get, like vegetarians don't live longer, they just look older, and if animals weren't meant to be eaten, then why are they made out of meat? It's the whole range of questions we get.
And you address those, and I like that there's a broad scope of things that you cover. And I wanted to point out too that it's in its 5th edition. So obviously you've hit a nerve with people, in a good way, and because it's been published, or it's in its 5th edition. That's congratulations on that. Yes, going along that, you do have some sort of humorous, if you will, responses to some of the more, I guess, silly, if you will, questions and comments that we hear. But you also go into some very serious issues about ethics, even about religion, the environment, and I'm fascinated by, maybe you could tell us about your background as your religious background, because that is also a focus in this book, and you point out world religions and their different stances on the consumption of animals, and perhaps you could speak to that a little bit.
Yes, I had 2 years in the theological college here before my beliefs strayed from the straight and narrow, I suppose, is one way of putting it. On the religious aspect, yes, there are some religions that are very concerned about what we do to animals, and there's, of course, the Seventh-day Adventists who do strongly recommend a vegetarian diet, even though it's not required for their membership. There's, of course, also the majority of religions who don't see any concern about killing and eating animals, and they point out what happened in Old Testament times, and also say that Jesus ate fish, which is quite possible, although it's by no means certain that he did. But I ask those people, irrespective of the theological arguments for and against, could I just ask you, can you picture Jesus working in an abattoir? Can you picture him slitting the throats of the animals as they go past him? And if they can't picture him doing that, I ask, well, do you believe that he would delegate to you what he wasn't prepared to do himself? And so even if in the desert in biblical times Jesus did eat fish and encourage others to do likewise, I don't see how that's any excuse for us to cause cruelty to animals when there's no need for us, because we have so much access to all types of other foods without having to take the lives of animals, or in the cases of, for instance, pigs, restraining them in metal cages where they can't even turn around, can't even take a step forward or backward just to satisfy our personal taste in food, not our personal need in food.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I've been reading a book called The Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ by Beklevic. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He goes so far as to say that no, they didn't eat any sort of animal products. It's also a very good book talking about early Christianity. And also, I was going to say something about the whole dominion over animals, because whether from a religious perspective or not, a lot of people sort of feel this superiority, this, I think I've heard the term speciesism. We're better and they're here for us.
Well, Genesis chapter 1 is where it's recorded that God said we have dominion over animals, but that's one translation of it. But what does dominion mean? And if we look at the dictionary definition of dominion, it doesn't mean that we have the rights to take other people's lives. For instance, New Zealand was known years ago as the Dominion of New Zealand, in the sense that Great Britain had dominion over New Zealand. But Great Britain didn't have dominion over New Zealanders in the sense that they could come and kill New Zealanders. And of course, that's not what dominion means. It means that, yes, we might have a higher ranking, but it doesn't give us the authority to commit murder, which in fact we do with animals. It's not their fault that they're a different species from what we are, or that maybe they're not quite as intelligent as we are. What matters is not can they match us in intelligence, but can they suffer? And the answer, as we know, is that they can. And as each year progresses, we learn more and more of how much more superior than we thought animals are in both intelligence and in perception of pain. Now, as I said right from the start, we know that we don't need any animal foods, either meat or dairy, to survive, and survive very well, and in fact to survive much better than if we consume them. And therefore, it comes down to, if we do have animal products, we do it simply because our taste preference we consider to be far more important than their well-being.
And John, just today I heard about a philosopher actually at Washington University in St. Louis. I don't know if you've heard about him, Adam Shriver, but he's actually supporting this idea that's being kicked around of breeding animals who do not feel pain so that we can all feel better about eating meat. I'm still to this moment trying to figure out how to respond to that. I'm so shocked by the whole idea of purposefully breeding animals to not suffer. Have you heard about this? And
yes, it was covered in our newspapers over here, Pamela. And my reaction to it, my first reaction is that if there's less pain, my word, that's good, but we're still taking lives. We have no right to take the life of another being.
Indeed. Now let's move to cockroaches and ants. Get on a different note here, because on one of your points you talk about cockroaches, and I kind of wanted to focus on that because in Houston we have cockroaches as big as buses flying around, not just crawling around. And so I really loved your approach to handling them. I don't know, in Australia, are the cockroaches so large and prevalent?
Oh, yes, we still have that problem. But, of course, they're a problem for us, but we're a problem for them, aren't we?
Yes.
It's both ways. But, yeah, okay, and it is a problem, but it's the same. I look on it as being the same way if my house is attacked by humans. I've got to do what I can to defend the house, and that applies also to cockroaches. And the first thing with cockroaches is not to leave food lying around that attracts them, so that they'll have to go somewhere else to dine. And as we know that the more food and food scraps we leave lying around, the more likely we are to get cockroaches. But whether it's cockroaches or ants, which gave the title to the book, I say that I don't intentionally kill them. I don't wish to kill them. But every movement we make as humans runs the risk of killing other insects. Killing insects, whether it's ants or whatever. And so veganism, like any philosophy, can't be perfect. There'll be times when we do something that we wish we hadn't or wish we could have avoided, but none of that is an excuse for avoiding suffering that is avoidable.
Right, and you also quote on that very page Henry Salt, who said, we would much rather
we'd much rather be inconsistently humane than consistently cruel, he said, I think, from memory.
Yes, it's a beautiful, I'm going to commit that to memory too. That's a really good one.
How true.
And in fact, you have a lot of good quotes here listed, and just, oh gosh, this book is wonderful. I just so enjoy this book. Let's see. Okay, so we've sort of talked about, I was going to say you sort of have this recipe for things to put around. It's natural and, well, looks like organic as well. Natural things to put around to deter these critters from coming in and bothering us. And so I'm actually going to try this out, because chemicals do seem to be the way that we go here for deterring, like I say, critters, those critters.
Yes, some of the insect sprays, anyhow, I don't like using because they can cause suffering. But there are some repellents, and some even coffee grounds can dissuade some insects from coming into your house. So, and lemon juice is another one. Eucalyptus oils, they can discourage insects from entering. And so it's worth trying to see what works in a particular area and with particular insects until you find what does deter them from coming in.
Mm-hmm. And it's possible. So I want to also, we're getting into, this is a wonderful conversation we're having, and I want us to go on for a few more minutes. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what's going on in Australia. I know another one of the points in your book, you referenced the kangaroo population and things like that. I was wondering, just because I don't know about our listeners, but I so rarely hear about what is going on in Australia, and so just would love to have you share with us. I think I heard that there was a study being done trying to sort of calculate how many vegetarians and vegans there are in Australia. I think I read that somewhere. And anyway, if you could just tell us about what's going on in Australia.
Well, you wouldn't call vegans a huge number of the population yet, but certainly things have changed, because back in the 70s, when I first was with the New South Wales Vegan Society, our meetings would attract a huge number of people, up to even 5 or 6 at some of them, and that didn't seem to grow very much. But lately, we find that a meeting for vegans will attract about 70 people. So things have improved. And also back in the 70s, if you told people you were a vegan, they would just look at you and have no idea what the word meant. Whereas we find, and I'm sure you find, that people now are becoming more used to the term vegan. But for measuring the percentage of the population who are vegan, it's not easy, because since our percentage is still so small, it's hard to get any accurate figure. And it's even harder now to get a percentage of vegetarians, because in a way it's great, because so many people are wanting to claim they're vegetarian, which means that it's no longer an embarrassment to say you're vegetarian. But because they're so keen to say they're vegetarian, those who still eat fish, or those who might eat meat once a week, trying to make the same claim. So really the actual figure of people who are vegetarian would be much lower than those who claim to be. I'm sure you'd find that too, Pamela.
Yes.
America.
Yes. And it is very, it makes me happy to know that people are more aware of this. And a lot of people maybe will never be vegetarian or vegan, but at least they're starting to see the health benefits of eating in such a way. So that's, I'm very encouraged by that. Yeah, I wondered, you mentioned the Vegetarian Vegan Society of Queensland, and I actually am a member of them, thanks to you, when I got your book, and you referred me to them, and they're just delightful. And I don't know, do you have much, I know you're in a different city than they are, but do you deal very much with them?
Yeah, I'm very impressed with the work they do, Pamela, and particularly with the introductory brochure they publish for people who are interested in vegetarian or veganism. You may have a copy of that. I'm not sure whether I sent you one, but it's called Why Vegan?
Oh, yes.
And Boycott Cruelty. And they send their brochures out anywhere in the world without cost. Can I give you their mail address?
Please.
It's the vegsoc.org.au. It's Veg Society, vegsoc.org.au. And they're very happy to send out these outstanding brochures, which to me cover everything from the health aspect to the cruelty aspect. It's a colourful brochure with pictures that make you think, if you still eat meat or still drink milk, but also is very good on publishing the attractive side of making the move, and that is how well you can eat and how enjoyable your eating can be by some of the great recipes that they publish. Mm-hmm.
I just got my latest issue of Natural Health and Vegetarian Life, so I'm excited about getting to read that. And also, I understand they're going to start publishing Vegan Voice, and that's going to be great too.
Vegan Voice has been going for some time, Pamela.
Oh, it has?
That's an excellent publication.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. Well, that's good. I don't get that yet. I've got to get that.
You have, yes. Oh, well, yes. No, that's very good publication.
So, okay. Well, Well, before we wrap up, I did want to hear just a few more things about what are going on, because I know there's environmental issues in Australia just like everywhere else, land being used for things other than growing fruits and vegetables, and I mentioned kangaroos earlier. I know there's hunting and things like that, and just as we sort of wind down, maybe just give us a little more information about that.
Yes, the kangaroo problem remains. There's the conflict between farmers who are concerned about damage that kangaroos will do to their property and to their fences. The other side is that many of us feel that the shooting of kangaroos has become not only for concerns about damage they might do, but more so that large profits can be made from their bodies. That concerns us no end, because when a kangaroo is killed, if it has a baby in its pouch, well, that baby is going to perhaps escape when the shooting happens, and then the baby can't survive on its own, so it will die a lingering death. That's a major concern with our national icon. The kangaroo appears on our coat of arms, and yet we shoot them wholesale now for a profit. That upsets me no end, for starters.
Yeah.
There are other things that are moving in the direction we like. There's been a lot of publicity here the last fortnight about the use of whips in horse racing, and whilst that hasn't been abolished, there have been new rules come in horse racing to limit the use and also to change the type of whip that's used so it won't cause the same pain or damage to the skin of the horses. So it's a move in the right direction. It's a result of the efforts of those who are concerned about the welfare of animals, and it is nice to see that even though progress is still very slow compared to what we'd like, at least progress is going in the right direction, and more people are becoming aware of what harm they're doing when they eat meat or use dairy products. And then the other thing that's pleasing is that the number of activities that vegans are involved in. There's a special in Sydney just coming up on the 1st of November is a cruelty-free day taking over the whole of a park in the centre of Sydney, and hundreds or even thousands of people attend when every stall that operates there is vegan. It's improving here. We're certainly known more than we were decades ago, Pamela.
Yes, now that's interesting. Oh my goodness, we need to look into doing something like that here. I'll have to get some more details on that. So, okay, well, we have been speaking with John Waddell, who is the author of But You Kill Ants, and it's in its 5th edition. And we have just so absolutely loved having you on the show, John, and I hope we get to have you on again sometime.
That would be nice, Pamela. Thanks very much for the invitation to speak on your program, Pamela.
Thank you, too. Okay, well, take care, and we'll talk to you soon. You're listening to KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston and 89.5 FM in Galveston, and on the web at kpft.org. My name is Pamela Kletke, and this is Vegan World Radio, heard every Wednesday night from 10 to 11 p.m. Archives of our show may be found on veganworldradio.org. Okay. Today, we are also going to be speaking with Maureen Collier, who is of the Vegetarian Vegan Society of Queensland in Australia. And we are so pleased that she's able to join us this evening, actually this afternoon for her. And there's a big time difference. And so we're very excited that she can take some time out to talk with us today, because she's a very busy woman, as we will hear in just a moment. So, Maureen, welcome to Vegan World Radio.
Thank you so much, Pamela.
We're glad to have you with us. And we would just like to, you're sort of the part 2 of our Australian trip here in Vegan World Radio this evening. And so what I'd like to do is just ask you a little bit about yourself and how you came to lead a vegan lifestyle, and sort of because we all sort of, as I mentioned when talking with John, sort of came to this usually not by birth. Some people do, but it's always interesting to hear how people came to be vegan. And so maybe you could tell us about yourself a little bit, your background, and then tell us about how you became vegan.
Well, I think I'll start telling you about how I became vegan, maybe.
Sure.
Nearly 72, about 5 weeks I'll be 72. I was working in the local drapery, and a woman came by and just gave me a little leaflet on animal liberation, beauty without cruelty. It was a sort of a combined organization, and I had no idea. I couldn't believe how naive I was. I'd reached the age of 40, And I didn't know any of these things happened. And I contacted Animal Lib. They had just formed and finished up being the first one to work in their office. And that was in 1980. And in 93, we had, Jackie Kent, our founder, had died, which came as a dreadful shock. She was so young at 51. And we had new people come in, and I just and we moved house, or moved office. And I just had the feeling it was probably about time. I stayed home and looked after my own animals for a change, and that was in 93. And then Diana Mitchell, who had started all the Squirrels restaurants, asked me, Squirrels vegetarian restaurants.
Now, I need to interject, because what in the world are Squirrels restaurants? I take it these are... Tell us what those are.
Oh, they were lovely, and they were vegetarian to start with, but then they became vegan, and they closed about 2 or 3 years ago, so we have no Squirrels restaurants anymore, but she'd taken a couple down to Sydney and Wollongong, and then came back up here and started another one at Newmarket, and they were all long gone now, which was a terrible shame, and she wrote so many books, about 5, 6 books, Squirrels recipe books, and they're out of print now too. I think we've only got 2 left, and the rest are out of print. So they were very, very popular.
I see.
But and she just said to me, would I take over the Vegetarian Vegan Society, or the Vegetarian Society we were then.
And this was just no big deal, Maureen, right? It's just going to be a few hours of your time, right?
Yeah. Oh yes.
Not going to take you much time at all.
2 hours a week, she said. It'll only take a couple of hours a week.
Yeah, we all
17 years later, or whatever it is, I'm still here.
Yeah. Well, so
trying to keep my eyes open at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, yes, these emails we've been exchanging, I marvel at your energy, and so tell us about the society, because I guess you, as things do, maybe start out a bit small, and so tell us about how it's grown over the years and sort of some of your activities.
Oh, well, it was started in 1990, and Diana Mitchell was one of the ones who started, Amanda Benham, who is a dietitian nutritionist, and Sue Lindbergh, who is in the anti-vaccination movement. They started the society in January 1990, and in 93 they asked me if I'd sort of take over the reins, and at that stage there were 43 members, and today we have 520.
Oh my, that's good. And so what do you attribute this
trouble?
Well, for you, because I was looking in your newsletter, this last one, about all the duties that you have, and obviously you've been working hard, as I'm sure the other society members have, and but what specifically, because those of us here who are also activists and wanting to encourage people to get involved, how do you account for this vast increase in membership over the years?
I don't know that we're not activists as such, I guess. We don't go on too many marches and, too many placards and all of that sort of, but we do have quite a comprehensive information pack which has recipes and information on farming, animal farming, the environment and health issues, a lot of nutrition stuff, and we send that out free to anyone who wants a pack to anywhere in Australia. So we have to knuckle down and sell a lot of books. And I have all the books here. I sell most of it's done by mail order.
Well, and so you have all these publications and all, and I guess I'm curious, because I know population wise, actually, what is the population of Australia? I'm showing my ignorance.
I think we're about 21.5 or 20 million now. Dreadful, I don't even know the population of Australia. I think it's about 22.
Shame on me for not looking that up. But I was just thinking that for such a relatively low population, when I was doing some research online, it just seemed like Australia popped up a lot as far as there being vegan people involved with vegan lifestyles, and particularly with the environmental aspect of it and the farming aspect of it. And so I just wondered if you had somehow reached out to people, and that would account for this increase in your membership.
Ooh, I would like to think so, but I think it's a fairly general thing. I don't think it's just me. But the packs go all over Australia, so and it's passed on to somebody else, and then they want their own, and so little ripples going out everywhere.
Yeah, sure. Well, and because, like I say, we have a wonderful organization here in Houston called Society of Peace, and they just do a lot of, I guess, similar things to what you do with, information and talking about other events and people who are supporting our causes and just a whole plethora of things that they do. And so it just seems like it's a very dense source of information that you all provide to people. And you put most of that together, is that right?
Yeah, I sort of photocopy it. I gathered bits and pieces from all over the place and photocopied it. Yeah, and we print a cute little booklet called Why Vegan, which Vegan Outreach in America. They were just so kind and helpful and gave us permission to Australianise their booklet, and we send that all around Australia too. In fact, I've just sent 4 boxes of them down to a fellow in Victoria. Yes, so the Vegan Outreach has really reached out because it's going all around Australia too, even though it's with Australian figures rather than the American figures.
Right, and we have not met, but I sort of picture you as this, the one-man band, the guy that's got the cymbals between his knees and the bass drum on his back. That's I kind of picture you when you do all these activities. That must be.
Well, I guess most people are working. I'm retired. Well, I'm supposed to be retired. That was the idea. I don't know what happened there. But, everything's sort of here. All the books are here, the library books are here, the computer, the photocopier, everything's here. And as I work from home, it's, I can do it all day long and half the night long.
That's good. Maybe some of our listeners are getting inspired by listening to you, saying, "Oh, I could do this. I could spend some time helping." And I was wondering, you had mentioned talking about, having stalls, which we don't tend to use that word. You're talking about booths, like in like sort of fairs and things like that, where you display your literature and whatnot. Is that what a stall is?
Yes.
Okay. And so could you tell us a little bit about those things that you do? What sort of events do you attend and to disseminate your information?
We don't seem to have too much happening in Queensland, but it's getting bigger. We've done Greenfest a couple of times now, 2 years running. One lass is starting up with a bunch of other people, another fair next March, I think it is. I'm not even aware of where it is to be held, actually, but that's going to be Green Earth, which is a sort of a vegan fair. And we've got the Brisbane Organic Growers. I'll be doing a stall there. A lot of environmental stalls that I go to a few hours away from home. Long drive, get up in the middle of the night after I've only been in bed a couple of hours, and, an hour and a half's drive, and set up, mainly books. We've only done food a few times. We do the RSPCA Million Paws Walk. They're at home, and we do vegan food. Well, the I won't say that. We do all vegan food at the RSPCA events, and we only do vegan food wherever we go, actually. We do food at Greenfest and at the RSPCA. Otherwise, the events are sort of a little bit too small to set up food stalls, so I just take books and information along.
Now, tell us about, or do you know anything about this? I was reading about the 2009 Sydney Cruelty-Free Living Festival. Now, this isn't in your town, but do you know anything about that?
I've never been, but a few people from Brisbane, not only one person that I know of from the society, but a few people do go down to Sydney for that, and apparently it's very successful. So this is what the Green Earth event is going to be about in March, is a sort of a cruelty-free vegan festival for Brisbane, finally, and at long last. I wouldn't attempt to do anything like that. I'm not capable. That's my excuse. I haven't got time.
You're sticking to it.
That one's somebody else's job.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like such a wonderful. I was going to talk a little bit about it's this wonderful festival in a park, and there's vendors who are selling cruelty-free products and vegan food, and there's music, and I thought, what a wonderful idea. And these sorts of things go on over here in the States too, but it's really great to hear about these sorts of things going on all over the world.
Yeah, I think they're beaut too, but to be honest, I personally would prefer to do something like Greenfest, which is It's not even vegetarian, much less a vegan affair. It's just all things green, cars, no matter what. And I prefer to do something like that where we're reaching the general public. And we've had the last 2 years, we have vegan pies. They're called pepper steak pies and sausage rolls. And we've sold beer. And we get all of the young fellows that come over and just buy a pie and a beer, please, and off they go. Yeah, and they haven't a clue what they're eating, and you say, how are the pies, fellas? And they go, oh, beaut, thumbs up, You say, no meat in them, and they, what? And I much prefer, doing that, getting out to the general public rather than just having a vegan affair where vegans want to go and hang out. That's beaut too, but I prefer.
Well, and that's a good point, because outreach is obviously very important. That's how we, get more people involved is bringing this message to people who hadn't perhaps heard it before. And food especially, the business I'm in is, preparing meals and food for people. And I do this a lot too, is prepare things that people don't really realize are not made with animal products. And so it's wonderful, and it's a joy to, tell people about that. And
show them that they're not missing out on it.
Right.
Yep. Just like you were saying.
And they're just so happy.
On a thing. They can still have their meat pies if they think they are, or
yeah.
Being Australia, we have meat pies.
Well, that's
and
right.
they're not missing a thing. And one lass has emailed me today, actually, and she said she's been vegetarian for 22 years, and she's been vegan now for 5 weeks. She said, but I do miss my sour cream on my tacos. I gave her a recipe for sour cream and said, you've got no excuse whatsoever now to go back to dairy just for the sake of sour cream.
That's right. That's right. There's so many wonderful substitutes. And one thing I often tell people is that, and this is not my original thought, but that, we have these sort of cravings and things that that we want these certain sensations in our mouth. And we can get those sensations in ways that don't involve animals. And, there are soy sausages out there and the meat pies that you're talking about. And we really can do this and sort of eventually, I would hope, wean people even off wanting the memory of such a thing. I don't even really like to do the substitutes myself because we're talking ethics and liberating animals and not consuming them. But for people who are sort of transitioning, it seems like we have so many products that we can share with them.
Oh, yes. But things like sour cream or their ice cream, they need all these comfort foods, I guess. And if we can supply a substitute, so much better. Now,
tell me can you describe your sour cream recipe?
Oh, it wasn't it was from Vegan. I don't even know how you pronounce it. I call it Veganamicon. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Oh, yes, the cookbook.
American.
Yes, and they have names I can't pronounce at the moment. I can't recall. But yeah,
Veganamicon. I'm not alone.
Veganamicon. That's a great book. I have that one, actually. They're wonderful.
It's a beauty. And so is Vegan with a Vengeance, the vegan table in front of me. Most of our books are American, actually, but we do have a really, really beautiful Aussie book.
Oh, what's that? Tell us.
Morsels, which is written by a lass in Sydney. And I sell an awful lot of those. They're a beauty, too.
Now, what's the title again?
Wild Morsels.
Wild Morsels. And who's the author?
Angela Stafford.
Wonderful. So you do have some Australian celebrities or authors?
I don't have many Australian books at all, actually. There are probably more out there if I got my nose up and had a look around.
Well, I wanted to move real quickly to Vegan Voice. Now, I know this is not, you don't publish this, right?
No.
Okay. But can you talk about that? Because that sounds like a wonderful publication.
It's a lovely magazine. It's produced by a couple in Nimbin. They have the most, well, I've never been there, but it sounds a beautiful property. And just the covers on the magazine are brilliant. And everyone is a photo from their garden and with either birds, king parrot, beautiful covers. And it's mainly about animal rights and then a section on vegan recipes. And it's beautiful. So we're finally, and at long last, introducing this as offering it to our members as part of the membership.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts in December. Already trying to figure out how I'm going to do it.
I'll bet you are. And before I forget, would you please give our listeners the name of your website? Because I'm sure people are going to want to go and check you out online.
Okay, www.veganvoice.com. vegsoc.org.au.
Okay, good. And that is the Vegetarian Vegan Society of Queensland. And actually, and I'll just interject right here, that we are speaking with Maureen Collier, who is from the society and has a very instrumental part in it, and encourage people to go online and have a look and see what's going on there. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, I came across a press release that the society issued about a survey that you're doing in Australia to find the number of vegetarians and vegans and what their attitudes are towards animals. And could you perhaps tell us a little bit about your survey? I know you're still working on it, but tell us what that's about and sort of the whys and wherefores.
It's really to determine just how many vegetarians and vegans there are in Australia, hoping that it's more than we think it is. They've asked people, well, normally in surveys, people just identify themselves, but we've asked them to do that, and this is actually run by Richard, one of our fellows on committee, and to identify themselves, but then also we've asked just what they do eat. And that's where all the surprises came in. People who think they're vegetarian and vegan quite work out.
But I eat some chicken sometimes, yeah.
Yes.
I'm vegetarian, but I eat chicken.
All the vegetarians we know who eat fish and this sort of thing, you know. Yeah. But they think they're vegetarian or they call themselves vegetarian. And then what he did say was that they asked how many people found it acceptable that all the baby male chicks were killed in the production of eggs. And 70% found that it was not acceptable for so many chicks to be killed just to produce eggs. So we should have more vegetarians and vegans than we think, shouldn't we?
Yeah, but I think what concerns me is the 30% who don't seem to have a position on that, I guess.
Very sad.
Yes.
That there are 30% who don't care.
Well, and let's see, and also this is a pretty comprehensive survey. It seems
the results will be in November sometime. I think about the end of November. So I'm itching to see what the results are.
Yes. And what do you think you might be able to do with the information from the survey?
Maybe have to work harder on people.
Well, I mean, it's good information to have. I was just thinking to a show that I helped out with a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the Child Nutrition Act that's coming up here to be discussed in our Congress, school lunches and things like that, and saying that, we should provide more vegetarian options in the schools. And so my thought was that perhaps something like the survey could be used to sort of, I'm assuming that the schools there don't heavily offer lots of vegetarian fare, but I could be wrong about that.
No, you're right, they don't. But
so,
with these pies that we were selling at Greenfest, we had a different pastry on them this time, and this was to fit in with the requirements for schools that we reduce the fat in the pastry and reduce the salt. This will then make them acceptable for school tuck shops. So that's a step forward to talking about, having these sort of pies in schools. Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
Right, because I work with children in a gardening program, preparing a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we harvest and all. And I've said this before, I hope it's a broken record, but kids really are pretty adventurous about eating things. And I mean, sure, they're picky too sometimes, but I really think that given, especially like what you're talking about, that seems very appetizing and not something strange and stringy and smelly like something might be, spinach or something. So
I think, like what you're saying too, that kids, if they've grown it themselves, they're more likely to want to eat it, want to try it, all that sort of thing.
Yes.
Is that what you do?
Yes. It's
talking about them growing their own.
Right. It's a wonderful. It's actually that we have an organization here in Houston called Urban Harvest, and they teach gardening classes, help out with a lot of community gardens, and then also host some after-school programs in the elementary schools and some of the other upper levels, but mainly elementary schools. And it's just wonderful. There's, I'm curious, we have more and more people here who are interested in growing their own fruits and vegetables. And do you see a similar movement in Australia?
Ooh, a lot of talk about it. How many are actually doing it, I don't know. Mm-hmm. As far as I'm aware, it's certainly not done in schools or anything like that, but there does seem to be quite a bit of animal husbandry done at schools, which I find a little strange.
Yes. Yeah, that is. I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma, and the FFA, Future Farmers of America, and things like that. It was very popular, and that's what they do is they raise animals for show, and they go to the fairs, and then of course they get auctioned off and taken to slaughter. It's traumatic for the kids who befriend these animals, and then off they go. But I take it that's what's similar programs in the schools there.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And then the animal comes back on a slab,
Mm-hmm.
blue ribbon on, and sold as their dinner that night.
Well, it's just insane, isn't it?
Somebody posted on the forum last night, actually, that there was an article from a school in England where a bunch of kids aged between 6 and 11. There were 14 of them, and 13 of these young children voted to have the lamb they had reared from tiny baby sold to the butcher, sent him off to the abattoirs. 13 voted for that, 1 voted against, so that the money they got from him they could buy more animals.
Oh, my
Now,
goodness.
that's rather distressing.
Really where we can sort of get some of these messages across about, where their food comes from. And I know some people say, we shouldn't show them graphic images and things like that. And, well, no one likes to look at graphic images, and I'm not saying a person should go and show these horrible things to children, but I also don't think it's fair to lie to them. And that's pretty much what we do, I think, is lie to children about what they're eating. And then they're conditioned as they get older. So I think a lot of the work that you're doing with the society, I'm hoping gets into younger people's hands. I'm sure it does.
Oh, yes. But when I was at Animal Lib, we used to have a children's group there. We were the Animal Liberation Movement, and we had a children's Animal Liberation Movement, CALM, so we had a separate little newsletter for them and all of that sort of thing. And
oh, how wonderful. How did that work?
we haven't done that with this.
Oh, you have?
But it's a good idea all the same.
Yeah, definitely.
I think a lot of parents with their youngsters try and organise picnic lunches and that sort of thing so that the kids can all get together.
Mm-hmm. Put that on your list, Maureen. Things to do.
Put it on my list. No!
Your long scroll of a list.
I'm trying to get out of this, Pam.
Poor thing. Bless your heart. Well, listen, and that just sort of reminds me that I have been taking up your time, and we are just so very, very grateful that you did take time out of your excessively busy schedule to talk with us about the Vegetarian Vegan Society of Queensland and about yourself and your background and what's going on. And I really hope our listeners are enlightened about something that's going on across the planet. And Maureen, give us your website one more time so people can go have a look.
Okay, www.vegsoc.org.au.
Great. Okay, well, I think we'll sign off right now, and thank you so much again, Maureen. We would love to have you on again. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Pamela. It's been a pleasure.
And now some announcements. The 2009 Earth Dance Prayer for Worldwide Peace Festival will take place from 4 to 7 p.m. on Saturday, September 26th at the Houston Hare Krishna Cultural Center. The festival also serves as a fundraiser for the charity of the host's choice, which is Food for Life, a nonprofit organization bringing food and life to the needy of the world through the liberal distribution of pure vegetarian meals. For more information, contact Dr. Hansa Bhakti Medley at 281-705-8826. On Saturday, September 26th, enjoy the Rock Out Concert for Peace Music Festival at the Last Concert Cafe, where more than 10 local bands will perform. There will be arts, crafts, and nonprofit booths, as well as food items with vegan and vegetarian options. Society of Peace is a co-sponsor of this festival and will have an outreach booth. This will be an all-night live music event, which features such genres as country, hard rock, jazz, and reggae. All proceeds benefit the Progressive Action Alliance and a soon-to-be-open vegan multi-arts venue and creative space, The Canvas. The festival begins at 4 p.m. and will run until 2 a.m. the next morning. For more information, please contact Society of Peace member Ivan Espinoza at ie3456@yahoo.com. The Houston Animal Rights Team is holding a reorganization meeting on Thursday, October 15th at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held at the Canvas in the Heights. HEART is looking for volunteers to help with animal rights demonstrations and protests, leafleting, and other forms of outreach. For more information, visit HoustonAnimalRights.com or call 713-380-HART. Society of Peace will be hosting a dinner to celebrate their 4th annual Texas Vegan Out Days campaign. The dinner starts at 6:30 p.m. and will take place at Pepper Tree Veggie Cuisine on Richmond Avenue. Seating is limited and RSVPs are required. Visit the Society of Peace website at societyofpeace.org for more information. On Saturday, October 17th, Houston vegan cardiologist Dr. Baxter Montgomery will present a special town hall meeting entitled The Declining State of Health in the U.S., organized to serve as a forum for the exchange of health information between medical experts, public policymakers, and the general public. The program will consist of a variety of presentations by medical experts Dr. T. Colin Campbell, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn, Dr. Neil Barnard, Dr. Lance Gould, and others. There will be a panel discussion on cardiovascular health in athletes, food preparation workshops, and an intimate question and answer lunch session with comedian and health advocate Dick Gregory. Also, attendees will have the opportunity to register for health screenings to be performed at a later date. For more information, visit societyofpeace.org. Stay tuned for Damage Control coming up next. Be sure to join us next Wednesday on Vegan World Radio at 10 p.m. Geraldine will be talking about World Vegan Day, which will be celebrated on November 1st. You are listening to Pacifica Radio, KPFT, Houston.
White hippie Moses, like an aphid in the roses. Universal inverse in inverted poses, like a snort of amnesia up all of your noses. Not what the man in the street supposes. Like a real-time being, it's the shadow you're seeing. It's the aureola, flying and fleeing. Essential potential of color keying. Why can't you forget all this, you and me? Sonic anathema, wake up you dreamer. I'm falling out of heaven, gonna crash on your beamer. Big man fly, pull down a screamer, break a femur, I'm going to Lima. Imploded in public. His nose was Roman, but his taste was